Good morning and welcome to another session on corporate governance from Naipunya Business School. So, as I have already mentioned, this is corporate governance BUS 4C22 of the MBA syllabus of University of Calicut, and myself, Dr. Jacob PM, Director, Naipunya Business School. I've been handling this subject during the fourth semester for MBA fourth semester students. And as a part of COVID lockdown, I thought we should send videos across to students to keep them on the academics track. So this is actually a venture done by us, by Naipunya Business School, to see that our students are not missing academics. So best of luck. Keep up the spirit. Try to learn from these presentations. Definitely, it will help you as far as examinations are concerned. So welcome once again. Today in the syllabus, we would be looking at Module 2, Part 2B, that is on agent-principal relationship. We have already covered the Part 2A, where we spoke about the different types of clauses as far as SEBI is concerned, and how SEBI has brought in changes as far as investor relationships are concerned. Now, today, under the same heading of agent-principal relationship, we will be looking at other stakeholders uh, and corporate governance. That is, other than investors and promoters, we will be looking at employees, institutional investors, customers, government, community, and also the administrative framework of corporate governance issues in managing dominant shareholders. With this, this module 2 will be complete. Now, when we look at other stakeholders and corporate governance, the first people who come to our mind would be the employees. Now, according to the OECD, employees and other stakeholders play an important role in contributing to the long-term success and performance of the corporation. And it is quite heartening to see that there are certain companies which have been offering even stock options to employees. So definitely you would find that employees would and other stakeholders will play a lot as far as long-term success is concerned. The advantage of employees as stakeholders are various advantages. On one side, if they are a shareholder, definitely they will be also be able to get a share of their profit of the corporation. And on the other side, it strengthens the system of human resource management. Because you would find that the best pool or the best skilled people will continue to work with the company. It increases the labor motivation, thereby it increases the job performance. It raises legitimacy and authority of the decision making because employees are part of the system, and it improves the corporate culture as well as it contributes to economic growth and social stability. So in every way you will find that employees play a very important part as far as organizations are concerned. And numerous companies have come out with various different types of employee participation, either as a partner or as a shareholder or maybe as an investor also. So it is good to have employees being to have continuous uh, a relationship with employees so that our corporation will be able to perform very well. Now, let us look at employees. In what way does employee participation contribute? One of the method is basically collective bargaining, through which employees will be present in the board of the organizations or corporations, and as a result, the dialogue. It is actually a good dialogue may happen between employees and as well as the management also. Similarly, the trade union can also be a representative in the board. As a result, whatever issues that are coming up from the employee side can be weighted off immediately. Similarly, financial participation, as I was just mentioning, employee sharing can also mean that you can have ESOP or employee stock options also, or stock bonus plans, or employee buyout, worker cooperatives, All these things can be possible through financial participation, and it will definitely take the organization in a very high level. Profit sharing also can be possible, especially after shares or even through bonus also. That also can be a very good one, which will definitely motivate employees to perform as far as the company is concerned. Then we have the other stakeholders. We have institutional investors. Now, who are institutional investors? Now, if you look at investors, there are two types of investors that you come across. One type of investor is basically the small shareholders, like for people who are having maybe 100 or 500 shares or 1,000 shares, could be called as actually minority shareholders. At the same time, there are even institutional investors who are very big shareholders having a huge chunk of shares. So in India, there are broadly four types of institutional investors. The developmental financial institutions like IFSI, ICICI, IDBI, the state financial corporations, similarly LIC, and even some of the banks also who have the mutual funds are contributing as far as a institutional investor. The second category also covers all insurance companies like LIC, General Insurance Corporations, a subsidiary, and the third category includes all the banks also. Finally, the last category, all mutual funds also are there. So you would find actually there are four different types. Developmental institutions which have already been established by the government earlier for the purpose of industrialization, like IFCI, ICICI, IDBI, and the state financial corporations. Apart from that, we have LIC and GIC, and finally we have all mutual funds, so mutual fund groups also, partners also, including UTI, which are included in the as investors. Now, institutional investors have a lot of interest in promoting the long-term health of the company, because they have actually collected money from the market, and they will be able to pay a good profit to the people who have invested through them. So as a result, you would find that they have a lot of interest in promoting long-term health of the company. And these are not small, maybe holding a large chunk, some around 5% or 10% or 15 percentage of the shares. For example, recently, one of the you would have found that one of the foreign institutional investor, uh, uh, we have Facebook purchasing a large chunk or almost 10% of the shares of Geo. The advantage is actually they will also be able to present their interest as far as Geo is concerned. So in the market, they can also have their presence. So you would find that always this gives actually a lot of support in terms of wealth, as well as in terms of even giving them needed support and guidance also as far as investments are concerned. Now, in most of the general annual meetings, small investors may not be able to raise questions, because they may not be able to meet all those. They will not be able to meet for those AGM, and being a very small party, and even if they present something, also definitely they may not. That sound may not be heard, or the bargaining power needed to make a difference cannot be felt. However, whereas these institutional investors, since they are having huge number of shares, definitely they would make their presence, and they will be able to voice their concern whenever there is an issue as far as the corporation is concerned. However, there is a flip side also. Institutional investors do not usually pursue radical changes, and instead focus on maintaining the financial and operational efficiency for the organization, and promote actually good corporate governance also. Sometimes it happens, they may not actually contribute the radical changes which are required as far as the organization is concerned. They become a little bit dormant. Similarly, institutional investors can be a rock of stability in turbulent times, because especially in the coal India crisis, where the PSC was trying to override many objections to shareholders, was thwarted in its attempt because the activism of the institutional investor. In case of Vedanta also, you would find that institutional investors made sure that the company followed social and environmental norms and did not write roughshod over its obligation to society and the government. But at the same time, you would find sometimes institutional investors also can be a problem, because institutional investors on certain occasions may force the company to do something illegal also, because of their presence in with huge number. Now, let us look at other stakeholders and corporate governance. We have customers also. Customers are also a very integral part of actually corporation, and it is necessary that the corporation should actually promote the best of its products or services as far as the customers are concerned. And customers are basically the general public also. They have got significant interest on the company, and in governance should ensure that the customers are also being given adequate information if it is on product or services, or solve problems and receive complaints in order to ensure total satisfaction of the customers, because customers can also influence investors also. If the company does not have a good brand value, naturally the support, financial support by major financial institutions or institutional investors also will be reduced. Then customer corporate governance should therefore uphold actually the interest of the customers also, according to the code of conduct, according to consumer law, so that that guarantees the product quality and on time delivery also. In the however, in the competitive context, you have to be fair and strict according to the and comply according to the laws and code of conduct as given by the country also. Corporate governance should comply with the terms of loans and obligations with creditors also, because creditors also are a very important part as far as corporate governance is concerned. Because an organization, definitely an organization, credits are also an important one, and these customers are like customers. The creditors also come under the customer, and they have to see that the corporation has to see that the customers are made satisfied. Now, the other stakeholder in corporate governance is basically the government. Of course, you cannot actually override the government. The government has only taken up a lot of initiatives as far as corporate governance is concerned, especially even setting up of SEBI, an autonomous body to check the investor protection, as well as to talk about, or as well as to voice about the importance of actually corporate governance. So, effective government action in the form of reformed regulatory system, improved on auditing, enforcement, implementation of corporate governance can should definitely be done by the government, and the parliament also sees to it that there are various stringent regulations being passed as far as regulatory concerned to run the corporates also. Similarly, government is very much interested in the CSR also, corporate social responsibility also, and the government of India has defined that corporate social responsibility under an act. So, government has also appointed a body to inspect and give severe punishment for violation of non-compliance of CSR. Government can improve also investor education also by giving information across and asking people to invest. Now, for example, if you take the case of national pension scheme, which the government has promoted, in fact, the government is promoting the corporations to corporations by is promoting the corporations by through the people and asking them to invest in pension, and this particular pension money is going to the organizations in form of an investment. So the corporations definitely would get investment from the government side also, because government only takes care of the provident fund, and this provident fund they have appointed company. These companies invest into corporations also. So financially also these companies are being supported. At the same time, the corporations are also expected to follow the or follow as well as comply according to government regulations, which is always investor friendly. Now, other stakeholders are community also, especially the local authority should be extend beyond the services provided to the overall welfare of the area. Especially one of the examples that you could find here is professional tax. Any organization which is set up in a particular area has to pay a professional tax, and this professional tax is usually paid to the panchayats in which the organization is situated. So the advantage is actually the community, and the panchayats also will contribute to see that that the corporation is kept safe and secure, and also provides jobs across to people. So in several ways, the community also is indebted as far as corporate governance is concerned. The local authority should ensure that the whole range of resources in the community is empowered to the full use of its corporation. And similarly, people should be able to contribute in different ways to the to the corporation in supporting, in showing leadership. Also, the local authority should must seek to reconcile if there is any conflicts which are happening. There also the community and the local public as well as the elected leaders across the panchayats and the wards should be able to contribute as far as the corporation is concerned, and the corporation in turn also will be able to provide them with jobs, opportunities, as well as development of the community also. So now we will look at the administrative framework of corporate governance, issues in managing dominant shareholders. Now, if you look at India as a whole, you would find there are three different types of companies that exist in India. One is called as the public sector units or PSUs. The other is called as multinational corporations or MNCs, and the other one is Indian companies, which many of them are basically family-owned concerns also. Now, in case of PSU, the dominant shareholder is basically the government of India itself, and the government holds a majority share, and the general public holds a minority stake in maybe as often as little as 20 percentage. Maybe some of these shares may be held even by majority financial institutions also. However, the major always you would find the board or the connected link will always the thing the PSU will always be managed by government. Now, government appoints its own directors, people who have a lenience towards them, or maybe sometimes you would find that belongs to their own party, or sometimes even some of the party leaders who have not been elected, maybe you have failed in the contest, also usually come up as chairman of some of these PSUs. So usually it is a political posting. Now, in the case when it becomes a political posting, the problem is, the CEO may have very limited financial and operating powers, and as a result, what will happen is the CEO's job is only to manage rather than to direct. So that is one of the issue with PSUs. As a result, many of the PSUs are in red, and you would also have read, that recently that Air India is for sale. Now, why is Air India for sale? Is because Air India has not been making profits despite after the merger between Indian Airlines and Air India some time back. Still, it continues to be in debt. Why is because there are a lot of other issues connected with the bureaucracy and even with employees also. At the same time, you would find that there are other private airlines which are doing tremendously well. Of course, I wouldn't say that everyone, because we have a case of Jet Airways, which was actually a private airline which did not do well. Again, that was again a dominant shareholder. The promoters were playing games. But there are companies like Indigo which are doing tremendously well. Jet Airways, sorry, SpiceJet also doing well. Even for that matter, Vistara. So, if the Indigo can do well, why not Air India? Air India is basically the carrier for India, and they have actually different types of infrastructure available. Similarly, there the resource also is very high. It has been brought up by the government, but at the same time, now I feel that it has been pushed down by the government also, and now it is for sale. So it going to become private. So let us see as to what is let us see as to what is going to happen in the case of Air India. However, there are also certain PSUs which do well. VPCL is one PSU which does well. However, the government plans to sell that also. Maybe in case of PPCL, it is because of the oil prices which has fallen down and the huge profit that the government is interested to generate out of oil is one reason why BPCL is doing well. However, let me conclude that PSUs are always controlled by the government, and these are not actually working like a corporation, like a multinational corporation, which usually gets a better profit as compared to these type of PSUs. However, except for BPCL, we do not have much of the companies, which of the PSUs in India, which does really well. The second group of dominant shareholders, you would find them in the multinational corporations. Now, when in the 90s, when the economy was open up for globalization, there are a lot of multinationals companies has come down to India. And the issue was that on one side they brought all the shares of these companies or the Indian companies at a very low rate, and they started doing a good job. And they have also raised actually the foreign stake, or even deep discounts are being given to the market to get to buy these shares and all. So that means a lot of minority shareholders have lost their shares in these companies. Now there is another problem also happening with the MNCs. When their interests are not being fulfilled in this country, they may even quit from this country also. That also may put actually the minority shareholders in a very bad situation, which has happened with some of the companies also. So again, MNC sometimes mergers happen. Then also sometimes our minority shareholders stand to be lost as far as financial wealth is concerned. The third group of companies which we have in this country is Indian companies, or sometimes family-owned concerns also, where you would find it is usually the promoters and friends and relatives come together. They start a company, they become the dominant shareholders. They play all games, especially the classical example is Satyam, where Satyam was playing all games, transferring money or RPTs from this company to Mitas, and finally inflated profits. Even the authorities or even the audit firms also colluded, directors also, relatives also colluded, and finally the company was brought down. And as a result, many of the minority shareholders have lost a lot of money. On one side, you would find that Indian companies, but at the same time, companies, there is always an opportunity to bring actually friends and relatives. However, SEBI has now clarified that independent directors, they have got very clear policy regarding independent directors. I'm sure you would be remembering them, that if the chairman or the executive director is a promoter, then 50% of the board should contain independent directors. And if he or she is basically an independent director, then only 33% of the people in the board need to be independent directors. So that is again a good step which has been brought by SEBI to control these type of issues in Indian companies. So, what are the changes that you recommend as far as PSUs are concerned? PSUs should be kept immune from political and bureaucratic interference. They should have a well-defined strategy. A clarity and transparency in communication should be there between investors. A board of directors should be using an objective function, and autonomy of the public sector is good for its performance. As far as MNCs are concerned, you would find that especially I have put up a case also. A whopping 95%, 94 percentage of Suzuki's returns from Maruti Suzuki come in the form of royalty. So there is a lot of money which is going to Japan and the parent company of Suzuki. Even though Maruti Suzuki, uh, the Suzuki was established as Maruti Suzuki, where the Japanese company only had 49% stake, but later, huge it has been after the globalization, they have actually reversed the trend, and it is more than 90 percentage right now of Suzuki, and only 10% remains. So there is a lot of money which goes from this country as royalty. Similar case was the ratio with the ABB, Asia Brown Boveri, and with GlaxoSmithKline, it was 59.4 percentage of the money. The profits was taken out from this country. 92 percentage in Cadbury profits have been taken out. So this has to be controlled. Especially with the case of royalty, there has to be a certain time period, and after that, royalty should not be given. Or another opportunity can be that royalty payment should be taxed at higher levels, so that the money would remain in India also. And similarly, R&D funded by Indian unit also should be utilized rather than utilizing these multinationals also. Similarly, multinationals also cannot, at their whims and fancies, close down the companies and move. In the case of Nokia, which just like that, closed, and they left this country. So those type of things also should not be allowed. Even Chevrolet also has closed down in India. So these and all there should be certain control as far as multinationals are concerned. So thank you very much for being with us, listening to this Module 2, Part B, Module 2, Part 2B. So thank you very much. It's a very small one, but quite thought-provoking, and I hope all of you will be able to understand. And if you require any support, you can always come back to contact me at Naipunya Business School, or you can write to me at hod@mbanimate.ac.in. And there are a lot of case studies on all these subjects, whether it is with PSU or whether it is with multinational companies or even with family based Indian companies also. Request all of you to read about it. And regarding the corporate social responsibility, as far as MBA is concerned, the same has been covered in the first semester when you learned the management theory and business ethics. So during that time also, we have been talking about the different case studies on corporate governance and corporate social responsibility. Requesting all of you to review those notes also. Definitely, it will support you. And as I've already mentioned you in the previous part also, AC Fernando's corporate governance also would be an asset as far as the subject is concerned. Please read that book and get your knowledge. So thank you very much for being with me once again. Thank you.